Our next speaker, I happened upon our next speaker. I was doing a little bit of research, and one of the topic areas that I'm particularly interested in is kind of the maker movement in and around gamification. And when I go around and I speak to people about various aspects of gamification, particularly as it relates to education, to children, to healthcare, I often get feedback from folks that, oh yeah, you know what, I've been doing that with my kids, or I've been doing that by myself. I do a pen and paper version of this for myself, or I do some kind of program to get my kids to do stuff. And our next speaker, Jons Guerrera, is, in addition to being a blogger and an author and just a really kind of interesting all-around guy who spent the last number of years doing technology and marketing, he's also a very inspirational individual who took it upon himself to gamify various aspects of his life for self-improvement. And I started to read his blog about it. I started to read people talking about what he had done. And I found myself just transfixed by this process of looking at the world in this way, looking at gamification as a kind of set of tools that you could use and turn around and apply to yourself. And of course, when you actually meet John in person, you'll see that that energy is translated to his actual real life in every way. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, Mr. Jons Guerrera.
Thank you.
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
Clicker.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Cool. So I'm Jons Guerrera, as was just mentioned, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning. Yogi Berra once said, "I knew I was going to take the wrong train, so I left early." And like Mr. Berra, I tend to plan in advance and start projects as early as possible so I can correct course in the event of, for lack of a better word, an epic fail. So my experience with gamifying my goals has certainly been no exception to this rule, as you'll soon see. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. As a bit of background, I discovered gamification in late 2010 after seeing Jesse Schell's Visions of the Gamepocalypse talk. And just by a quick show of hands, how many people have actually seen this talk? Okay, so like 20% of you. For those who haven't seen it, Schell envisions a world of points and bonuses made possible through increasingly cheap sensors put in everyday items. So on one hand, as someone who blogs about motivation, goals, personal development, I immediately saw the potential that this kind of gamification held for motivating us in a new and unique way. On the other hand, a future in which my toothbrush gives me points every time I brush my teeth didn't really excite me in the least bit, nor did the idea of getting a good citizen bonus for filing my taxes on time. I wanted the pulleys and levers of gamification to revolve around my personal goals, rather than the goals of external entities or my toothbrush. I decided to put this idea into action in the middle of 2011. I hopped on my computer expecting to see a wide variety of tools at this point created by people who shared this vision. But to be honest, I didn't see too much out there. There was one notable exception, however, health and fitness, as I'm sure many of you are aware. A Nike Plus, Health Month existed back then, and Fitocracy came shortly afterwards. And these are all amazing tools for people looking to add some game mechanics to their health and fitness goals. But what if you wanted to start a business, or write a speech, or read 30 books this year? How would you go about gamifying those goals in an easy and effective way? So I sought to create a system that could work for any goal that you may want to set, and I made sure it reflected everything I'd learned about motivation and achievement from all the research I'd come across in my years of blogging about the two subjects. So I wasted no time getting started. I spent dozens of hours going through blogs, articles, books, TED Talks, YouTube videos, you name it, I probably went through it. And I'm proud to say, after dozens of hours of excruciating work, version 1 was a complete and epic failure. It was pretty miserable. I thought I had all the research in there, but it was clunky, heavy to use. I'm not a developer, so this was just all me putting stuff together in Excel sheets. It was just very clunky, and it didn't work. But I didn't give up. Version 2 came a few months later, and I fixed a lot of the problems of version 1. And it was a step in the right direction, but it still wasn't motivating me any more than my goals normally were. And finally, version 3, which is what I use now, it finally tipped the scales. It makes me noticeably more motivated. It's easy to use, and I've been using it ever since, and I love it. But I don't want to claim it's the end-all, be-all goal gamification system that you should all use. It's definitely a work in progress still. But through version 1 through version 3, I've made a lot of progress, and it's through that progress that I've picked up a few insights on self-motivation, the importance of goal structure, and how crucial it is to choose the right tools. And those are the kind of insights I'd like to share with you today. So to waste no time, since the clock's running fast, the first of these is gamify your habits first. As I'm sure many of you know, changing your habits and the deeply ingrained lifestyle choices that you've been doing for your entire life are one of the most difficult things in the world to do. In fact, an article in Fast Company in 2005 pointed out that 9 out of 10 heart patients, after undergoing a coronary artery bypass grafting procedure, were told to change their lifestyle or face a premature death, basically, but they were unable to do so even after 2 years of being told this. That's 9 out of 10. And that shocks a lot of people when they hear that, because even when their life was at stake, 90% could not make the changes they needed, quit smoking, exercise more, change their diet, in order to extend their lifespan, or at least not prematurely end it. So clearly habits are important and very powerful, and possibly even dangerous if we don't consciously shape them. So armed with this knowledge, I experimented with gamifying my habits before anything else in this version 3 of my goal gamification system, and it worked surprisingly well. So at least initially, I didn't start with gamifying the things most people would think, like learning to code, or cooking, or blogging, or the things you like to do. I started with the very difficult things, like work ethic, sleep schedule, my diet. And that's actually where one of my favorite goals that I'll review with you in just a second came into being. And I call it Weekend Warrior. And basically, I wanted to increase how productive I was on the weekends. I work long hours during the week, and it's really the only time I have, the weekends, to work on personal projects that mean a lot to me. So what I did was I just took out a Post-it note one day and listed 1 through 13 on the Post-it note, and I kept track of how much time I spent working on any task, chore, or project on the weekends. And if I worked 1 hour, I'd circle off 1. If I worked a few hours later in the day, I'd circle off 2 and 3. And however many weekends it took, I aimed to get to the end, which is 13, 20, and 25, as you can see behind you. Once I completed the Post-it note, I earned the reward on the bottom, which I crossed out a couple of times, but there's an Amazon gift card, some cookbooks, you get the idea. I did this for 3 successive versions, with one being more difficult than the previous. And after doing this, I noticed that when I'd wake up on Saturdays, it used to be a struggle to get to start working. I would want to watch TV, lie in bed, not really do anything. That used to be my weekends, bad habit from college. But after doing this, I noticed I would wake up and it would be a reflex. I would go straight to my desk and start working because I'd trained myself to do so because I wanted some of these rewards that I'd put on this Post-it note. So gamifying my work ethic, for me, killing procrastination on the weekends did wonders. And this took me about 4 months of doing. I mean, I can't say I did 13 hours in one weekend and it was easy. It was very tough. But again, seeing that progress also motivated me as well, another game mechanic. So for me, killing procrastination did wonders. For you, if you want to take this into your own personal life, it might be watching less TV, changing your diet so that you have more energy throughout the week. You know those habits you need to change, you need to work on. So I really highly recommend starting with those habits first before you go to the more surface level fun things, like skills you're trying to learn. And you'd be surprised at how big of a difference it makes. Gamification is powerful, but you can't gamify everything all at once. It's so much to manage. So I found by hyper-focusing on the habits first, they make a huge difference, and I highly recommend starting there. So that's insight number 1. Gamify your habits first. Insight number 2, slow and steady. Just by a quick show of hands, how many people have recently played a computer or video game where the game chose to walk you through a tutorial or a practice mission before you started the real campaign? Just show of hands. Great, awesome. So it's pretty obvious why they do that, right? It's a much better user experience, a gamer experience, to get yourself eased into the game, figure out the controls, how it applies to what you're supposed to be doing in the game, rather than being thrown headfirst into the first campaign and in this frantic attempt to figure out all the controls. So it often surprises me that people approach their personal goals in the complete opposite fashion of that. Think of New Year's resolutions, where starting after New Year's, you recover from your hangover and you make all these massive changes because this is going to be your year. You make this massive change to your diet. You start running 10 miles a day. You make all these positive changes. And sure, you stick with it a few weeks, maybe a few months, but we all know how that story ends. You generally revert back because it's too many changes at once. There's so much difficulty and change in your life, and it's just frankly overwhelming. So I decided to take the complete opposite approach of this New Year's resolution approach, I call it, and decided to adopt a slow and steady approach and see how it worked. And I'm not the only one doing this. There's something called Kaizen, there we go, which is a philosophy of continuous steady improvement that many companies are embracing as a way to become incredibly efficient, from manufacturing processes all the way to teams and employees. So I wanted to borrow a page from Kaizen's book and apply that to my goals. All right, so these are the evil forces I was up against in doing this. Experts at stealing my time at this point, frankly. And these are arch nemesis as I was trying to write the draft of this speech. Again, like I said, I usually work on weekends, but I wanted to get more aggressive with how much time I spent writing and editing this speech throughout the week, meaning when I got home from work around 10 or 11 o'clock. So again, this is what I was up against. I knew it wouldn't be easy, so I decided this would be a great chance to experiment with that slow and steady approach I just mentioned to you. So I decided to structure my goal in the following way. For every day that I dedicated at least 10 minutes, keep that in mind, 10 minutes to writing and editing the speech during the week, I would earn 3 points. For every day that I started building up a streak without missing a day, I would get bonus points on top of the baseline 3. And when the deadline arrived for submitting the first draft, I would redeem these points for items on my Amazon.com wish list, with obviously more desirable things requiring more points. And that's what this looks like. Again, you'll learn I'm a huge fan of Post-it notes. But basically, I took this screenshot while I was in the middle of it. It's just the date, yes or no, how many points, and the blue column is the running total. Very easy to keep track of. And I learned 2 surprising things from doing this. One was a pleasant surprise, and the other shocked me, frankly. The first thing I learned is that 10 minutes was the key to this, because even if I got home at 11, my mindset wasn't, oh man, do I even have time to do this, and waste all this mental energy debating if I should work on it or just go to bed. I figured if I just start at 11 p.m., which is right now, I'll be done by 11:10, and then I can go to bed. That's only 10 minutes, not a big deal. And that's the exact mindset I wanted. 10 minutes every day kind of adds up to a lot. But what really surprised me is this. And this may look a little confusing, so allow me to explain. That 10-minute upfront commitment, I decided to keep track with how much time I actually spent writing. That 10-minute upfront commitment resulted in 27 minutes of me writing, so from 11 to about 11:27 every night. And I did not see that coming. So I guess what happened is at some point I got into that state of flow that we just heard about, getting into the ideas of the speech and building things out. And before I knew it, 27 minutes were up. So the 10-minute commitment got me there, and then at some point I got into that flow state, and next thing I know, 27 minutes had elapsed, which is exactly what I wanted. That is an amazing return on the investment of that 10 minutes. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure that, again, most people like to make major changes up front, again, the New Year's resolution effect. If I had required that 27 minutes of myself up front when I got home at 11 o'clock, I'm pretty sure I would have worked for a total of 0 minutes. Every excuse would have ran through my head. I have to prepare my lunch. I have to take a shower. I have to do all this stuff before going to bed. Not going to happen today, maybe tomorrow. Bad. So I highly recommend that you think in these terms. How could you make your upfront commitment for a goal you want to implement into your life so low, make it such an easy commitment, you don't even need to think about whether or not you have time to do it? How can you break it down into bite-sized chunks? And ask yourself these questions when you set your goal and make the changes you need to incorporate that. And again, you'll be surprised at how effective it is. Really, that's the only way I can put it. So just to wrap up this idea, if this person here had actually used this Kaizen approach to break down their goals into easy and manageable steps, they might have established their utopian anarchic state by now, along with having bought the soy milk and tofu. So that's insight number 2, slow and steady. Insight number 3, mobile apps, good. Post-it notes, they're phenomenal. So I'm going to try and convince you of that. I know I have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of mobile phones in the crowd right now. Hopefully you're taking notes and not doing other stuff. But I'm also going to go through the apps just because I know there are a lot of people who would prefer to use them when they get started because they kind of have the game layer built in. There's not a lot of work that needs to be done up front. So I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly. Let's see. Can you see the full thing? Perfect. So this is Level Me Up. I'm sure many of you have used it, or at least a few of you. It's basically a time tracker, and what you do is you set up your character profile. You put in the skills you'd like to develop. And as you record the amount of time you spend, it has a timer running when you work on various skills. It fills up the experience bar, and you level up, just like in a game. And you can share your progress on Twitter, Facebook. It's a pretty cool app. I believe it's $1.99. And I normally try and be platform agnostic with these things, but unfortunately, there's no Android alternative to this. So if there are any Android developers in the room, hint, hint. But this is the closest thing I could find for Android users. This is Pomodoro. Again, it's another time tracker, but it doesn't track by skill. It tracks by how many Pomodoros you do, which is another way of saying a 25-minute burst of work. So as you can see, you have your progress bar, and you can see stats on how many you've done this week or today. So it's a little bit of a game mechanic on top of just time tracking. And again, for those of you who like being in the browser, Timer tab for Chrome is wonderful, and you can even write your times down in an Excel sheet. And if you're an Excel nerd like I am, you can do if statements, conditional formatting, pretty much make this whole system live in Excel, which I did for a while. But I find this to be bulky, but some people might really enjoy that. Next is if you want to track by streaks. There's Streaks for iPhone, very self-explanatory title, and Habit Streak Pro for Android. This is for people who want to just take daily action on something and kind of build up that habit of doing it every day or every set period without missing a day. This is actually something Jerry Seinfeld used to do for writing comedy, but that's a different story. Let's see. And for the low-tech people in the crowd, I'm not sure if there are many of you, but I'm actually one of them for certain things, you can use just a giant wall planner. This is what I use to record how often I go to the gym. If I'm sick, I write I'm sick, but I usually aim to go 3 times a week. And I like this a lot better than looking at my phone because I see it when I wake up, I see it when I get home. It just holds me very accountable. So to each their own. And next we have outcomes. If you just want to see the amount of progress you're making at everything, on everything at any given point, this is Goalscape. I highly recommend it. Just fair warning, it is expensive software. It's like $80 to $100. But if you like seeing a snapshot of all the progress you're making and how it filters down into your bigger projects and then the core purpose for why you're doing all of the things that kind of revolve around it, there's no other tool that compares. It's very intuitive, easy to use, and again, like for the person trying to live a full life, it gives a clear snapshot of how you're doing in work, music, fitness. You get the idea. So this is a great tool. But you know what? Those are some apps. Let's talk about Post-it notes. That's what I'm really excited to talk about. So this is the basic structure I use for this version 3 that I keep referencing for gamifying my goals. It's basically a goal, a reward, the points, and optional activated abilities. So let's talk about this example goal that I made here. Develop better eating and exercise habits. Yeah, pretty simple. And now let's talk about the rewards. What's in it for me to make this very difficult change in my life? At 50 points, that Xbox game I had my eye on. At 150 points, that 2007 bottle of Napa Cabernet, my favorite. And at 500 points, that trip to France I've always wanted. So let's talk about how we earn these rewards, and that's through the points. Next Post-it note over. And you're just looking at a screenshot of my desk, by the way. This is how I keep track of it. I just put Post-it notes on my desk. So 5 points, daily run. That's the biggest change I need to make. I hate running, but I know it's good for me. So I'll give myself 5 points for that. Salads, I already eat a lot of them. I already have a somewhat healthy diet, and I can eat a lot of salads multiple times a day, so I'll get a point for that. And if I eat candy, baked goods, or anything unhealthy, I can actually lose points. So this is not an experience point structure where it can only go up. This is like health points where it can go up and down based on how healthy I'm being. And now activated abilities is kind of a fun way to add some strategic elements into your, this goal that you're working on. So the activated ability here, I have terrible handwriting, so I'll just read it out to you. Use this Post-it note for 1 cheat meal without any point deductions. Discard after use, replenishes every 2 weeks. So you can even add that on your Google Calendar to have your activated abilities replenishing at different times. So feel free to get creative with that. So this is my standard template, if you will, for how I start gamifying goals initially if I want to do something. But again, you can use Post-it notes for pretty much anything. All of the time, the streaks, the outcomes I just discussed in app form, I've done them in Post-it notes. This is from when I first started the experiment. You have time, you have tracking my streaks and outcomes. It's very easy to use Post-it notes, and perhaps the biggest benefit is iterating rapidly. Apps are good, but let's say you know what, this level me up is great, but I want to add a new mechanic that I just learned about that I think will really motivate me. Good luck calling a developer and telling them to put that in for you. And it can be really annoying to have to track one thing here, one thing there. So having Post-it notes allows you to put everything together. It's very easy to work with. It's free if you don't mind stealing from your office or something. But yeah, so I highly recommend Post-it notes if you want to start testing and exploring different ways to motivate yourself through game mechanics. But again, apps are a great place to start. So that's insight number 3. Mobile apps are good. Post-it notes, love them. Insight number 4, people and purpose. So what I mean by this is that I found a strong positive correlation between the number of people involved in my goal, whether friends, family, coworkers, and my subsequent success. I also found the same correlation when looking at how much purpose was behind each goal. In other words, how easily I could tie a goal to what I really wanted to do over the course of my life. This is backed up actually by research done by Jane McGonigal on epic meaning and social fabric in games and how engaging they are and how engaged they make us. So if we can borrow a page from that book and add more epic meaning into our goals and a stronger social fabric, we'll be all the more engaged for doing so, right? And I've actually found that to be the case. So I'll just give you a couple of examples on how you use this at a personal level. For people, well, this is an easy one. I do this for when I go to the gym. I love to have a workout partner. It's a simple way to hold yourself accountable. If you keep canceling on them, they're going to get pissed off, and you're going to feel pretty terrible about it, as opposed to making excuses for yourself, and it's like, oh, I'll go another time. It's just me. I'm not really going with anyone. So it keeps you accountable. There's collaboration elements. If I'm lifting weights and I'm about to fail or I can't lift as much as I wanted, I have a workout partner to kind of help me out there. And there's also competition. If my workout partner's making all this progress and I'm not, what the hell am I doing wrong? We're doing the same workout, right? So it helps you, it adds that competitive element too. And these all do wonders for keeping at least me motivated and pretty much everyone else who embraces the idea of a workout partner. For diet and nutrition, it's a little bit tougher. I actually have to eat gluten-free and dairy-free about 99% of the time, which is incredibly restricting. People my age don't even think about dietary changes at that level. So what I do is I joined a couple of meetup groups for people who actually have the same dietary restrictions. It's just a great way to feel social support, exchange recipes, restaurants we can all eat at, and just feel a sense of support from people who understand what I'm going through. So these are just two quick examples of adding more people into your goals, but online communities like Reddit, any online forums that you're a fan of, are just a great way to get more people involved with what you're doing. So I'm going to speed through this because I just ran out of time. So purpose. The best way to do this, sit down once a month. I generally prefer once a month. You might prefer more. And just ask yourself, does this short-term goal I'm working on, take a tally of everything, does this short-term goal I'm working on tie into my purpose, my longer-term goals, the things I want to do with my life in a clear and direct way? And if not, why am I doing this? So more often than not, I'll find goals that kind of snuck their way in, like, oh, my friend's doing this, I'll try and do it too, it looks cool. Then I realize it's just distracting from the things that matter most to me. And you'll find that there are some things you can kind of put on the back burner that you may need to reevaluate. And so you'll walk away from this monthly sit-down with two things. One, you'll be much more focused because you've now prioritized what matters most to you and you've gotten rid of the fluff. And two, you'll feel this renewed sense of drive, knowing the clear connection in the forefront of your mind, the clear connection between what I'm doing now and the major things I want to accomplish over the course of my life. So insight number 4, people and purpose, bring them in as often as you can. Now, the last insight is rewards done right. There's a study done mentioned in Drive by Dan Pink about people who were paid to solve puzzles versus people who weren't. Both groups were, in the beginning, not paid. Then one group was paid, and then no longer paid. And what they found is that the people who were paid and no longer paid lost that intrinsic motivation, that natural curiosity to play with the puzzles after the monetary reward was taken away. Compared to the other group that was never paid anything, that kept playing with the puzzles. They were still curious about it. So rewards, when done wrong, can actually snuff your natural curiosity, just kill it. So I wanted to make sure to get it right in this system. And I did a bunch of testing, and I found that there is a way to do it, and there are 2 points you need to keep in mind. One, use tangible rewards as much as possible. Cash does not motivate nearly as much as something you can vision, like something you can imagine yourself using, appreciate. Imagine if your significant other gave you cash as a gift for your birthday. Like, how would that feel? I mean, it's really, there's no meaning, there's nothing really to appreciate there. So use tangible rewards. It's a lot easier to use those. The value can be lower even, but if it's something you imagine as something you'd enjoy using, it helps. And second, remember that Kaizen structure I mentioned in insight number 2? Because I tied the reward to a really low upfront commitment, let's go back to that talk. 10-minute requirement, 27 minutes of writing. So the reward, the points, were tied to that 10 minutes. So that means 17 of those minutes was actually spent in a state of natural curiosity, getting all those ideas out on paper. So I still gave my natural curiosity some breathing room. So try and approach that with your goals too. Tie the reward to that upfront low commitment, and that way the remainder of your time can be spent just exploring the activity on your own terms, so the natural curiosity doesn't get snuffed out. Pretty sure if you require an hour upfront of something you really don't want to do, for the sake of using rewards as a motivator, you'll hate that activity after the time period's elapsed. So just to wrap up really quickly, in the future, I mean, I'm just one of the first few people to document my experiences about this publicly. I really look forward to seeing how people in this space work in this unique intersection of goals and games, and to be honest, I'm sure a few of them are in this room right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Awesome. If you guys have questions, by the way, for John, you can come down here. There's some microphones at the front. So my first question for you is, clearly you're not normal, okay? So, which I think is a beautiful and really interesting thing, because getting the insight, getting this insight from you about, hey, like if you're really this motivated, what does this look like? All right, can you just like briefly say, what if we were working with somebody that was less less of a go-getter than you? What would be the one thing that's like stuck out for you that you would think about as a designer of this experience?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's sometimes impossible to avoid people that may not be on the same level as you with how you like to approach your goals. I'd say the easiest way is to just lead by example. If you start doing this, let's say I used to have some Post-it notes on my desk at work, and people would see me in flow, doing hard work and checking things off and calculating points, and they're like, hey, what are you doing there? And if you want them to kind of get on board or really get brought up to your level and you think it'll help them, just be a really good salesman of this concept. Tell them how it's working for you, why you're doing it, how much fun it is. Just be really good at selling it, and again, just lead by example. You can't force someone to play a game. They're not going to have fun, and that ruins the point of the game.
So maybe the actual Post-it notes help in a way because they're demonstrable, whereas an app is not something that people can see every
That could be it, yeah.
Okay. Question right here, yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, just get closer to it.
Inspirational, I should say, and aspirational for me.
Thank you.
Just had a quick question on a comment you made about rewards, and the fact that when you incent people with, cash and sort of like more of a transactional reward, they lose their motivation in doing something, right? Do you think that if you started with more of a cash transactional reward and then move to like an intrinsic reward, can you do that? If they're conditioned to respond specifically, like say a loyalty program, right? I get a mile on my card or I get points, which I redeem for merchandise. Can you shift that behavior once it's, the damage is done?
The best part about this is that, at least when an n equals 1 in my experiment, I was able to test it very quickly. Just think, how many steps between what you're giving them and what they ultimately want to get. So with miles, those miles are being imagined into a trip to Hawaii, for example, and that's what people really think about. It really is case-by-case basis. If there's an easy way to test it, I highly recommend it, but there's certainly no reason why using money up front, that's not what would kill motivation. It's just I found that tangible rewards helped more so. So it's not, you're not killing anything by using cash, so there shouldn't be any problem with switching if I had to take an educated
And when
guess.
you say tangible rewards, you really mean non-cash things?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
We only have time for one more question, unfortunately. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. John, great talk, thank you. I'm also a big fan of writing things down on paper, especially goals and things I want to get done. But it's not as scalable as, say, something like an app. Do you have, or can you share with us, if you do, have any plans to release something that other people would be able to use on a platform?
Well, I'd say the one good thing about Post-it notes not being scalable, meaning there's only so much room on your desk or to hang them up, that actually helps prioritize, which I really like. But on the same token, an app that would make some of these easier, like writing out the Post-it notes, making little square boxes, is kind of annoying. I have so many ideas, and I am just not a developer. So I've had ideas in the works. I'm the business guy with all the ideas and the business plan, but I've yet to learn to develop. So if there are any developers who would like to see a tool like that, make it happen. I don't know, come talk to me. I would have a lot to talk about. But again, Post-it notes help prioritize, but in the meanwhile, nothing.
God, 3M should give you some money for this, dude. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John. Thanks. I'll take that from you.